come up to me and thank and talk about this book and how it impacted them and how they learned so much, because this book is about culture. It's about our culture, whether you like it or whether you don't like it. The only
Right.
difference is we are forced to digest their culture. It's all around us. I mean, we were raised in it, whereas anytime someone of another race feels uncomfortable, then we're
Mm-hmm.
too black.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't get down with that game. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just that person that, I'll be on the cuffs of being what I want to be, but I can't not be who Anissa is because it makes somebody else feel better.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Enoch, your thoughts.
Uh, well, first and foremost, I don't think any white person should be making comparisons that involve segregation, slavery, Jim Crow, any of those things, right? That's not in your wheelbarrow of information to use for metaphors and analogies. Stay
Mm-hmm.
away
Mhm.
from it, right? I'm also in general not a fan of exaggerated comparison because I feel like it always muddies the point and it erases the nuance in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think self-publishing is a form of segregation. I do think there is a stigma around self-publishing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And at the same time, how are we defining self-published?
Mm-hmm.
Because technically, I am self-published because
Mm-hmm.
my book is published underneath my publishing company, so
Me too.
I
Mhm.
published myself, right?
Right.
But also from the viewpoint of someone who doesn't know that I own Black Minds Publishing, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not self-published.
Mm-hmm.
You would just see my company's logo, and if you don't do your research, it looks like someone else published me, right? And so there's like a lot of ways to play around with self-publishing as it stands, as a term that I think some of the discussion from other writers,
Mm-hmm.
specifically writers who are in these larger book deals, hasn't evolved to catch up with, right? Because they're not in that. A lot of them are not in that space to be able to understand or know like how that's functioning. The same way I think the music industry comparison was
Mm.
really on point. The
Yeah.
same way that a rapper with a major deal may not understand all the ins and outs of being an independent artist or being an independent artist that's signed to an independent label and so on and so forth, because you don't have to worry about none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So yeah, I think there is a stigma, but I do not think it is the equivalent of
Segregation
yeah, choosing to eat at
at the
a
diner.
black only, yeah, like a blacks only diner. And it's
Right.
who's to say the blacks only didiner don't got good food? You
Right.
feel me? Like
Right.
It's
this
that,
It's
stuff
to
gonna
me.
be
It's just
better.
insulting.
Because there
It's
ain't
just
gonna be no
insulting.
raisins in the potato salad, and they
yeah,
ain't gonna be, we not gonna
We ain't
have.
need no
I'm just
carrots and
saying. I'm
raisins.
just saying.
and that's like such a white American ideology because we also move under this assumption that everything that was blacks only was low quality, and that's
Right.
also not true,
Right.
right? That's
That's
like
true.
mainstream media bullshit that we've been fed because there were
Mm-hmm.
also black only things by black people that were quite good, very
Mm-hmm.
quality,
And
right?
which is why they
Probably
always burned it down.
exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's
And when
Yep.
you
the things.
when you first proposed this topic to us a while ago, right? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know where it came from, which you just gave us in real time, right? So I
Right.
had my mind going as to what I wanted to kind of go with it, and
Mm-hmm.
I would just still say this: all of us are in the business of books. That's
Mm-hmm.
business. We all know that
Absolutely.
money is green. Money is not black nor white. And I think I can speak for all of us. We want everybody to buy our books. So I
Right.
write self help books. I don't know what everybody else write. I'm just meeting you guys today, but
Right.
in the self help genre, I'm definitely writing to vast audiences. I'm making a point when I'm writing to where it's universal enough for the young demographic and the adult demographic. I'm speaking to all ethnicities, all social economic backgrounds, and like the sister said earlier, I probably go to more private schools than public schools.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
probably get the bigger bag as far as the check and the traveling and pay for all my hotel and everything from white
Mm-hmm.
schools than our schools. So I
Mm-hmm.
would never purposely segregate myself and paint myself in the corner because I'd be cutting myself off from a large. We live in a global economy right now. I
Right.
mean, why
Absolutely.
would I paint myself into segregation? You know what I'm saying when
Right.
it
Well,
comes
it's like writing what you know. So if
Mhm.
that's the type of life you lived, then that's what you know.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's a myth that things that are explicitly black don't make money, right?
Mhm.
Because I've been into a lot of these white spaces specifically because of how unapologetically black I am, right? And there's
Mhm.
like this thing about um there's this thing about just like hearing about how fucking horrible they are that some white people love, and they will literally pay me to just come and do these poems and talk about this rhetoric that just shows them like, yo, your system is trash and
Right.
it treats
Right.
everyone trash and whiteness as a construct is trash. And they're like, great. And like giving up bread for it, right? So
Yes.
we see like the same concept with like comic books, right? Where there's all this hesitation around creating more content for black heroes, right? We still don't have a live action movie for Static Shock and things like this.
Right.
But then at the same time, these are intellectual properties that have proven to sell over time, right? These are
Absolutely.
intellectual properties that have brought in a good amount of money for these organizations. And so there's a way in which the rhetoric does not match the statistics. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So, the next question, should black authors patiently demand their right to be published along with white authors, even though we repeatedly encounter hostility, rejection, and just blatant racism from traditional publishers and even white authors?
When you say patiently wait, I'm struggling with the patient part because we've been waiting forever. So I just
Forever,
was
ever.
wondering when does that cap out? It's interesting, Audrey, that we have to, as Black authors, Black creatives, that in 2022 we have to have this conversation about just a level playing field. It saddens me, but I'm also knocking on 50 in a couple months. I know that is the reality in which we live in,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't understand this concept of why it has to be us against them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get that. um so does anybody, I guess I really can't answer that question because I don't understand the patient part, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand when is that coming, because I
Right.
feel like I've been patient. I've been writing for damn near over 25 years, and I'm still waiting. So I would like to know when I'm about to cap out,
Mm-hmm.
or something. So
Mm-hmm.
why
Mm-hmm.
do we
I would.
have to have the us against them, and like there's not enough to go around for everybody, like you said, globally? Why is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Yeah. No, I would say like we said with the music game, right? Like we decide, like, you know what, we're not waiting on y'all. We're gonna start our own labels. We're gonna start our own platforms, our own streaming, our own whatever. And if the deal happens to come, then so be it. And I have more to barter with at your bargaining table. But I'm not like I'm sitting around twiddling my
Mm-mm.
thumbs waiting on you. I'ma still
Right.
write what I write independently, and I'ma
Mm-hmm.
still in the background do my book proposals, do my different things in the background. But I'm not
Right.
sitting around waiting
Yeah, that's how
on
I feel.
anybody,
Okay.
anything.
And,
I
and
feel the
to
same
interject
way.
before you talk, Barcelona, for those watching the YouTube live, StreamYard glitched. There was a wonderful intro that didn't get to show, and you guys apparently didn't see the video until about 7 minutes in. So just make sure to catch the replay, and you'll hear the intro of the authors and see the intro, and you'll get to catch the first 7 minutes of the conversation. Okay, Barcelona, go.
Well, I wasn't really going to say anything. I was just going to say that I agree with him. Like, I'm not waiting for anybody to like publish me. Like, I'm just going to do it myself, pretty much. Like,
Right. Enoch?
Yeah, um I don't think any dynamic that involves me having to prove my value is healthy.
Absolutely.
Right.
Um, and that is both
right.
professionally and personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the
Right.
same way I won't sit around for my partner to finally realize that I bring something of value to this space, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to sit around for a company to wait and realize that, because ultimately you see what you want to see. And so
Mm-hmm.
at this point,
Mm-hmm.
if I am doing these things, if I have this proven track record, if I'm putting out this quality material, and you're still like, oh, it's not enough for me, then it's just not enough for you. And you can jump on the
That's it.
bandwagon late, and you can catch me when my price is higher, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
That's it.
If you don't know my value now,
That's
once
it.
the snowball starts going, the price goes up. The price
Today's
goes up.
yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So now, do you all know about the hashtag publishing paid me?
No.
I have
Okay.
heard of it, but I'm not super familiar.
Okay, well, basically, what happened was a black woman decided to, back in 2020, in June of 2020, decided to find out what the discrepancies were in traditional publishing with advances given to black authors versus white authors. And basically, black and white authors both agreed to reveal their advances. And the responses showed that black authors with well established fan bases earn much smaller advances, okay, not even six figures, than their white counterparts. And their advances grow very slowly over time. However, white authors with absolutely no track record, no platform, no established fan base, and no readership reported their advances, and they were getting six and sometimes seven figure advances
Wow.
over authors like N.K.
I believe
Jemisin,
it.
who was a Hugo Award winning author multiple times, has yet to make a six figure advance. And this one white man, I remember specifically reading, he said that he got a six figure advance for a debut novel with absolutely no platform, no readership, nothing.
I believe
Okay?
it.
So, that being said, that really opened up a huge discussion, and then supposedly traditional publishing decided to work on that. But we all know how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
They picked one
should
token black person to to be the one person that say, okay, wait a minute, hold up.
right.
Remember this person? That's what they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the white authors even admitted that the advances they got in many cases were life changing.
I
Yeah.
Because
bet.
you get a big check like that, yeah, it's going to change your life. Whereas black authors who had several books out, won awards, have these huge fan bases on social media, not even a six figure advance, not even close to it. So, should black authors even be motivated to go the traditional route, knowing that this type of white supremacist thing is going on in traditional publishing?
I know for me, I wrote my first book 20 plus years ago, and back then I was green. I thought the only way to be found, to be heard, to be seen was, through a publishing house. And I think by my 23rd, not lying, y'all, rejection letter, it was like, it diminished everything that I thought that I was good at. It made me question everything, and I put it away. So I say that we still have to self-publish. We still have to do what we have to do. It is evident based on what you just said that these publishing companies do not see our worth as worthy. They do not see us as someone that needs to be heard and seen by the masses. They want to throw a couple coins on you and call it done. So we still have to be diligent, and self-publish and do our own thing, because
Absolutely.
in 2022 we're still dealing with this, and I was dealing with this 25 plus years ago. It doesn't give me any inclination that things are going to change.
It's a
Absolutely.
it's a crazy two-sided coin because I had the pleasure of interviewing Imani Perry, Dr. Imani Perry, about a month or two ago, right? Her big smash book, South to America, and all of that. And she was saying in another interview how she finally got the advance she needed to be able to write a South to America. Every book that she had prior to that was only good to a certain level that she expected. because the money wasn't there for her to go and be able to take all these research trips and do all this background stuff she had to do and take the time off of working to be able to write a South to America. That money finally came at this point in her career. So every book that she had before that she felt was kind of inferior because of financial backing reasons. So to answer that question, I guess, man, it's tough for us. 'Cause, I mean, most of us probably still working. I mean, I'm still working more than one job. I'm not living off my book money, so I can imagine if I had six figures, it's like, wow, I could really just focus on writing, and my bills are
Mhm.
paid, and just spend 8 hours a day just writing. Like, what could I write if I had 8 hours a day just to write?
Right.
I'm curious to know what that would be like.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
And
I
some
guess you kind of
comments
sort of
from
stay in
me.
your heart. You want that bag. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, right. And some comments from my audience. DL White says, I don't think self or small press publishing is for everyone. It's not easy, and not everyone is cut out for it. It's like telling everyone that needs a job to start a business.
That's true.
And then Read Love Listen says, I've listened to many
I agree.
podcasts where Black and BIPOC authors got crumbs, and some get their payments split into 2 to 4 payments. Yes. And then Read Love Listen says, I know that when I do finally finish a manuscript, edit, etc., I will self-publish. I know the industry will either steal my idea or reject or try to change it. True.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. So, other thoughts on this, Enoch?
I definitely think it depends on what your goal is, right? Because if you are working on something and you want it to be seen by as many people as possible, and you don't really care about when or how that happens, maybe the big publishing route is for you, right? If you're chasing a bag, that probably will be for you. I don't, both roads, in my opinion, both roads are difficult, right? I don't necessarily
Yep.
think one
Yep.
is easier than the other. And being someone who is like on the other side, because I do publish other people as well, I also think doing your due diligence in terms of finding a proper home for your book if you don't want to self-publish is important,
Yes.
right? Because
Right.
I talk to a lot of authors and I've received a lot of submissions for publishing where I'm like, clearly you didn't go through my website, right? Because if you did, you would know that this manuscript is not a good fit for us. Or, maybe your manuscript is a good fit, but you didn't go through the proper processes that were laid out for you to submit it, right? And so it's kind of like there are a bunch of different elements to the publishing side. If you're trying to get a big publisher, like, if you're
Random
trying
House,
to, yeah,
Random House, Penguin, and all that. Yeah.
yeah,
Penguin.
that's going to come with a whole bunch of stuff, right? But there are smaller publishers who have enough capital to give you uh, a miniature version of the larger publishing experience. Not all small publishers are broke, right? Not all small publishers require you to do everything yourself. Some of them will carry some of that legwork and you'll get to, be out to
Yep.
larger people without, having to necessarily do the independent author grind. So it really just depends on doing your research.
And
Mhm.
and back to the music industry once again, right? It's just so parallel. You hear authors talking about some of the deals that they did get when they finally got on. You it's like a music deal. It's like the old school music deals where it's pretty much like they're
Yeah.
taking such a percentage out of it. It's like you getting a bad TLC deal. You know what I'm saying? It's like, wait a minute, I sold this many books, but the money don't look like I sold that many books on the
Right.
backside. So,
Right.
like he
Absolutely.
said, you got to have your goal going into publishing. What are you trying to accomplish with this? You know?
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
like one of the viewers said that the large publishing houses try to change your books. The small publishing houses are doing that too. Because I know one was going to pick me up some years ago and they wanted me to make my characters more hood. And I was like, well, that's not how I grew up. You know what I mean? Like so
Jeez.
it's the small, and this was a black woman, black owned. So
Wow.
I'm saying it's not just the big ones; it's the small ones too.
I want to tell a little thing real quick. I always say this to people in my podcast. I get interviews sometimes about whenever I have done like a big deal with Barnes and Nobles or a big thing at Books a Million. It's like the biggest thing I've done in my career. I get the biggest crowd, all this fanfare, right? I actually made the least amount of money at those shows, at those book signings. Because Barnes and Nobles is going to chop my head off as far as what they want, their percentage. So whenever I do a hole in the wall venue, I make way more money at venues like that. But to an onlooker that's uneducated about this process, they thinking like, man, you had books a million, man, you made it. I'm like, no, I made the least money that day.
Right.
I had the
Right.
most
Yeah.
views, I had the most clicks, the most shares, the most whatever, and I made the least money that day.
Mm,
That's the other side of
that's
the game
sad.
that they don't realize.
Right. Right. And then I have some more comments. DL White says it's also about so much more than being recognized. The slice of the pie is bigger on the back end, but you come out of pocket on the front end. And Reed Love Listen says, I'd only go the traditional route if they offer more money than what I've seen them offer folks. A 5K advance is nada to me. True.
Right.
Because 5K really is not, that's not
That's
a lot of money.
nothing. It's
That's
nothing.
nothing.
That's
That's
nothing.
nothing, especially compared to what they offer, white authors. So, and then DL says your
Spend
first
that in a
deal is always
month.
going to be crap. So
Like
that depends. If you're black, your first deal is always going to be
like the
crap.
brother like the brother Enoch said, right? So I also have a publishing company myself, right? But if you take the time to learn the self-publishing process, the 5 grand advance or whatever you're gonna pay to do a
Oh
deal,
God.
you can alleviate all of those things. I know somebody that pays 7,000 in editing alone.
Wow.
I know somebody in my friend circle, they paid 7 grand for editing, and guess what? They still had grammatical error. I'm
Wow.
like, I did my entire book for way less than 7 grand. Every part of the process way less than 700. If you're willing to take the time to learn these skill sets and do certain things yourself, you can alleviate some of that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Wow.
to add to that, well, couple things. Um, we talk a lot about the advance, right? Um, and you can have a really good advance with a bad contract, right? So you could have like a $15,000 advance, and your contract be horrible because you giving up 80% of whatever your book makes to the publishing company, right? So like the advance is part of it, and at the same time, it's not the entire thing. Also, and this might be, I guess, like a little controversial depending on how you want to take it, but comparison is important in terms of understanding the gap between us and other people. However, comparison should not always be the motivator behind the choices we make. And what I mean by that is, do we understand that there is a gap between the advances we get offered as black or authors of color and white authors? Absolutely. Is that good to know for us to understand how we need to advocate when we're in these spaces? Absolutely. Does that mean that if I get a contract that works for me, that has a low advance, that I shouldn't take it? Not necessarily, because what I do with that money may drastically shift what happens for everybody else after me, right? And that doesn't mean like, oh, we should take deals that don't benefit us or so on and so forth. But sometimes I think instead of thinking about what am I not receiving that this other person is, sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what can I do with what I'm receiving that works for me? And if you know, like, yo, I can take this and make this a thing, by all means, yo, take that 5K deal. If it's gonna catapult you in a way that something you were doing before isn't, even if other people are getting more than that, right? Because it's
Right.
at the end of the day, what you're gonna do with these things is much more important than like, somebody who got a 15K deal and then spent 15K on editing. Right. And it's like they broke even. They didn't have anything to show for that, but they got a larger advance than you. So, it's just a lot of nuances to take into account.
Right, right. And DL says there might be other concessions on the contract. The point is to earn out the advance so you can make royalties. Which, yeah, that's good. But then when you think about the way that they set up black authors almost to fail so that you don't earn out that advance, and then they say, okay, well, we're not going to go ahead with the other books in your contract. So, it's a, excuse me, it's kind of a, It's a tricky situation all the way around. So, moving on to the next question. Although there are more Black authors being published in various genres, there's still a large presence of traditionally published books by Black authors that focus on Black trauma and Black pain. How do you think Black indie authors can continue to change the tide of Black stories from trauma and pain to stories where the characters are just living their everyday lives and, you know, everyday situations and things happen to them, but they just happen to be Black?
Listen,
Anissa.
I don't,
Ladies first.
you know, I don't mean this. If I'm gonna, normally, if you have to give a prerequisite before you say something, you probably shouldn't say the shit, but I'm gonna say it. I'm so over talking about our trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so over hearing about slavery. I don't know if this is for us or for them, or we found a wave and we hold on to that motherfucker with everything we got. Sorry, bad language. Um, but I can't be mad at the hustle. I can't be mad at the game.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in this culture where we gotta educate people on some shit that's been happening that's been around forever. So yeah, I'm over these Black trauma. I'm over slavery. I'm over talking about that. I want to get to some real shit. I want to talk about how we self-destruct ourselves and how that self-destruction sometimes is coming from childhood trauma. I ain't talking about damn slavery. I'm talking about some stuff that most of us in this day and time can relate to. We know our story of slavery. I don't know how many 1619 projects, 1820, 1985, 1976. I don't know how many more you can tell. I think we got it, and I think they get it. They just want to choose to either be on the bandwagon or not be on the bandwagon. As an indie author, we have multiple things coming at us at different times that we're up against, right? We're up against traditional white publishing, right? We've already established that battle. Then we're now there's it's been divided into half. Now over here, our half has been divided again, and now we have to compete with either being hood Black, you know what I mean?
Right.
Where I've seen some covers that's been really interesting. I won't say any names, but it's they
Please
put the
don't.
whole topic of their book as their title.
Mm-hmm.
But we have this interesting time that we're in where we're trying to figure out, yeah, I'm Black and I'm proud to be Black, but but my Black story can be shared with everybody else. So I know I got off topic and I'm sorry, but to sum this up, I'm tired of talking about slavery. I'm tired of seeing it on TV. I am over it. It's time for us to move past that, talk about some real community shit right now.
Right.
Sorry.
Or as DL says, just regular ass characters. going
Regular
through some
ass characters,
regular
you know.
ass shit.
Well,
Yeah.
when you
Yeah. Which is my shit, by the way. It's real regular.
you because when you first mentioned the word trauma, right? I wasn't even thinking about the slavery piece she just gave so eloquently, but I was thinking about like the brother said, being in self-publishing, publishing other authors. Probably 80% of the stories that come to us is, unfortunately, you've been traumatized as a child. You might have had a rape or whatever situation. You might have had drugs in your family situation, like that kind of trauma. That's probably 80% of what come across the desk. Because that's their story, that's what they know. And
But the
unfortunately, we're the most
interesting enough,
traumatized people in
that's
the
what
in the in
I
the
think
but
country.
those are
what
not the
You know what
ones.
I'm saying?
But those are not the stories that are being told, though. If you see, the mainstream stories, books that are catapulting New York, Times best-selling book, are those books of slavery, of that
Oh, I,
type
I
of.
thought she meant the self-publishing world.
no,
But yeah,
she
as
was
far
talking
as, far as
about
the big
traditional
market, yeah,
publishing.
you definitely, yeah,
Oh,
traditionally, yeah, they definitely riding that wave. They
yeah,
definitely
Because
white
are.
people want to talk about slavery now, which is interesting.
yeah,
And
We've
like
been
somebody
talking
said,
about it.
I just think it's
earlier,
because in the traditional publishing world that there is a certain comfort level with always seeing Black characters and Black
no,
stories with that dysfunction, with that trauma, with
but
the pain. And
Like somebody
they
said earlier, they only let one of us in at a time.
right,
Like comedians almost, right? So at one time
right.
they had Ta-Nehisi Coates on everything, and I love Coates, by the way. I'm not dissing Coates. He was on everything you could think of when it comes to race. Put him on CNN, put him on ABC, whatever. And now it's Ibram X Kendi once again. I love that brother. No diss to him, but they had that one particular person you see on all the books, right? 16, 19, 400 souls. I mean, you name it. It's him and Henry Louis Gates and a couple others. It's just repetitive.
Right. Barcelona, your
You know,
face. Give me your thoughts. Can you hear me, Barcelona? I don't think she can hear
there's a
me.
little bit of a freeze going on.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
she
might
froze.
be
Okay,
might be a
well,
little bit of a
Enoch,
freeze.
your thoughts.
Um, this is another. All right, it's twofold thought. First thing is, yeah, absolutely. I see the importance of talking about the black pain specifically as it relates to like structural oppression and slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I do echo the sentiment of like I specifically am tired of seeing that, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I it just I'm more invested in like Afrofuturism or just
Right.
showing more examples of what blackness looks like if it continues to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like
Right.
thinking about the past. And like this is rhetoric we see all the time, even when it comes to advocation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're always talking about civil rights and what they did back then. And it's like, bro, it's a different time now, right?
Right.
Like we can take the things we can take and we
Mm-hmm.
can just
Right.
move on in the discussion, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And on that same note, this is another one of those things that I think comes down to research because there are a lot of black authors who are telling stories about black people living regular lives. There
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of black authors that are telling sci-fi black stories, fantasy
Absolutely.
black stories,
Absolutely.
Fantasy.
right? But if we don't do the research, right, we're going to think that all the black stories are whatever mainstream media, which, if we're being realistic, is white people, is telling us it is, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like when I have conversations with some of my old heads about music, right? And they're like, oh, these young kids, they not spitting like they used to, da 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 da. And I'm like, well, are you basing it off the radio or are you actually in the library in Apple Music, right? Are
Mm-hmm.
you browsing the new albums that's dropping? Are you keeping up with the artists that are actually putting out quality content?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you trusting this white person to
Exactly.
play the quality music for you? Because that's two
Exactly.
different things, right? And so it's
Exactly.
like, are the slavery and the I grew up broke in a gang life stories the mainstream media? Absolutely. But the less time we pay attention to that and the more time we put into propping up the stories that we find that actually have what we want, I feel like the more it shifts and skews that landscape to a point where even if the mainstream media isn't pushing it, there is a black mainstream media, right? It's
Right.
it's amongst us. Like Black Twitter
Absolutely.
changes stuff. You feel
Mm-hmm.
me? And so it's like the more we push out into our own communities and the more information we spread of like, yo, check this out if you're looking for this type of thing and da 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 da, the more we create the conversation and control the conversation for ourselves,
Absolutely.
without inviting all these other people who know nothing about this shit into it.
Absolutely. And Talia Clay says, I think we have to affirm a different future for ourselves. Afrofuturism fantasy, we write the world and it will come into fruition.
Yes.
Read Love Listen says, so true. I love reading about dragon shifters and vampires. It takes time to find the black authors writing it, but I choose to take the time to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, DL makes a good point that people read whatever the big five publishers hand them when there are
Yes.
tons of other stuff out there. And
It's
we're not even talking about indie authors. I mean, indie authors is a whole nother basket of, story goodness that people just don't even know about because indie authors just don't get the kind of traction on Book Talk and Bookstagram like the traditionally black published authors do. You usually see the same books cycling through your feeds, but the indie authors do not get a lot of play. And it's like you said, it's being lazy. This whole podcast got started because when the pandemic hit in 2020 and my library closed, I had to find books. I just went to my library and would just go browse what they had out on the tables, and just find what looked good to me. And of course, there were never black authors on the tables other than Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, those guys, no shade to them, but, you might
Yeah,
see
for that
Jacqueline
too.
Woodson maybe, but they weren't out until February 1st. And then they appeared
Black
everywhere.
History Month.
Right. And then March 1st, they were tucked neatly back to wherever they, pulled them out from. And I realized during the pandemic that I was a lazy reader and that my books, I had the people in the black canon, like I said, the Toni Morrisons, James Baldwin, Ralph Ellison, Richard Wright. I had their books because I had to read them in college. But beyond that, I didn't have a lot of fiction by black authors. My shelves were almost completely white when it came to my fiction. Okay. And when I started my podcast, I started looking for black authors, and then a friend introduced me to black indie authors. And that's how this got started, because I said, I need to talk to these authors about their books. And now 2021 came and I completely decolonized my shelves. I took off all the white authors, put them in boxes, and sent them to Goodwill. So now my shelves, fiction and nonfiction, are completely black. There are maybe a handful of books by white authors, and they are nonfiction books, and they are by carefully vetted authors who are white, but they tell our history like it is. So, with traditional publishing, they say that there's just these certain types of books, and that black authors aren't in all these other spaces, that we're not in fantasy, that we're not in sci-fi, that we're not in this. That's garbage. And you're starting to see more of it come out now. You're starting to see some YA and some fantasy and stuff like that, but it's not anywhere near the number of authors, black authors, that are out here writing in those genres, because you're just seeing, like you said, what traditional publishing wants to hand you.
The bandwagon authors is what I call that.
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
everybody's like, "Oh, we got to go out here and get this Will Smith book." I had a debate on Facebook with somebody that I don't know, and my husband says, "Why do you even do that? Why are you arguing with folks you don't know?" But that's just me. And I said, if I'm very outspoken, I said, if somebody else was telling the same damn story that Will Smith told, that wasn't Will Smith, I bet you any amount of money, your ass wouldn't have went out and bought that book. You bought the book because it was Will Smith's story. But if it was the same story from someone, Enoch, would you have bought the book?
Absolutely.
They couldn't say anything because we are so busy trying to be bandwagon people. We are so busy trying to be bandwagon, and I like to equate it with like squirrels. You know how a squirrel gets in the middle of the street? It's like, okay, do I want to go back? Do I want to go this way?
Right.
That's what we do. We follow the next bouncy ball. We never stay consistent with anything. It's like, okay, I do reels and stuff on Instagram. I come from a more motivational empowerment thing. I don't have time to tear people down. I ain't got time to show my ass, my titties, none of that stuff. Sorry, y'all. Y'all do that, go for it. Just not my thing. Yes. But from time to time, I can be insightful and say some real good shit that might be like, ooh. But you got somebody over here that's twerking, that I didn't know they were still twerking, but doing all these things that's no craft, no talent attached to it, that gets more likes and views and all this stuff than something that might be life altering and life changing. So we as a people, we have to stop taking these crumbs and thinking that's all we deserve. We have to start building our own tables. Absolutely. We have to start bringing the food to our table and eat together. That's the only way Black self-publishing is going to get the recognition that it gets. If we're sitting around waiting on white people to bless us and to throw us some roses and throw us a little bit of coins, then it's going to continue to be, the chosen Black person, the token Black person that's like, that's going to make them feel good about themselves and make them say, hey, I love Black people. I know a Black person. We have to get away from that.
Right. Absolutely. So, do you believe that black books by black authors can reach the success level of white books without a white audience?
How do we define success? First of all,
That's exactly what I was
is
about to
that
ask.
like sales? Is that like rankings? Is that the best selling list? Like how are we quantifying this
Y'all want to be
conversation?
difficult?
Getting our
Barcelona,
books made
go.
into movies.
You know what? I was gonna keep it surface with you, Audra. I know what you meant.
Thank you, Anissa. Barcelona, what are your thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question? Because I
Yes,
did have
ma'am.
something about, but
Yes,
go ahead
I
and repeat
said,
the question. I
do
just
you
want to make
believe that
sure.
black books by black authors can reach the success levels, let's say the popularity levels of white books by white authors like Harry Potter or Wheel of Time or those types of things? Do you think black books can reach those levels without the white audience?
Sadly, I don't think so.
Okay.
Only because we've been trying to do this for so long. And if you've noticed, like, we've had a lot of successful traditional black authors back in the day, and none of their stuff has been made into movies, except for like Zane. But that, how many years after her books were sold did that happen? And
Right.
then,
The
you
Color
know, I don't
Purple.
see,
Hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like we're not going to get there if we're depending on them.
Okay. Jonathan?
To uh
Oh,
Uh-oh, he
to
about to go deep. He about to
okay,
go
Enoch.
deep.
Enoch, go ahead.
Take it easy on us.
to reach a level of popularity like that, in my mind, means that you are consumed by the majority, which inherently will include white people because they are the majority of America. So, like, technicality wise,
Mhm.
no, I don't think it's possible because you would need to be you would need to be taken in by the majority, or at least they would have to be a part of that majority that is taking you in, right?
So you don't
However,
think that there's enough black people to bring our books to the level of those books?
nah, because
Black
it
people that
just
read. You left one
yeah.
important aspect out.
Remember,
Black
it's
people who read. I'm
See,
sorry.
see, I'm trying to be quiet over here.
oh
Black
now
people
you
who
you
read.
know
I
I'm
don't
gonna
want to get.
We're not talking about black people who watch
I
a
don't want to.
minute TikTok video. We're talking about black
I don't
people
want to
who
get.
read.
I don't want to get canceled,
Sorry.
and I'm
Oh,
sure I get
yeah.
canceled. But she already said it.
I'm gonna
The
get hate
biggest thing
mail.
I
I'm
knew
is,
used to
Anissa
it.
was gonna
to
come
be
up in here
honest, I
act.
don't.
Anissa needs some act right. I knew as soon as she logged in, it was gonna be some bullshit coming from.
I want to be. I want to be 1,000. Right. I don't think that we as a collective are really reading like that. You
No.
know, these people that really their whole life is Harry
Really?
Potter, their whole life is Game of
He not
Thrones, their
the
whole life is Lord of the Rings, like
I don't know about
like
that, Jonathan. I don't know about
Bookstagram,
that.
Bookstagram, right? And these other spaces, that's a small percentile of these platforms. The TikTok, the YouTube,
Hmm.
those of us that read, that's black. Like she
mm,
said, the key word is that read. I don't think it's
Okay.
that big of a percentage to be on the Harry Potter level. Is all I'm trying to say.
yeah, I agree with that part. I agree
These
with
folks go get the
I don't
cards,
think
like
Wait.
their whole house be Harry Potter. Like
I don't think it's a
they
big
really
enough
go in like
percentage
that.
to
Listen,
make
and
that
Read Love
same.
Listen, I'm stirring the pot. I'm throwing Read Love Listen under the bus. She said, and who
uh-oh.
read fiction, cough, the men's only want to read self help and the occasional popular book.
So all right. Here's the thing, right? Here's the thing, because we have to take social constructs and like the social climate into consideration when we have these conversations, right?
Okay,
Right.
agreed.
We're in a transitional space right now, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of there are a lot of people who were doing the things we're saying people like black folk don't do in the shadows because it wasn't popular to do in the open,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so like there are much more men than we think that are into fiction and into reading these things. It just now we're in a climate where it's popular to do it out in the open. And so you're finding out that there are more people who are doing it, right? But
Okay.
it's not that these things were not occurring. They've always been occurring. They just haven't always been occurring in a visible manner, right? Because like I can remember most of my homies were into the same things I were into, reading manga, reading comic books, right? We literally would be at the library in school reading these things. But that was not something that was socially wide accepted. You feel me? So it was like, I'ma just do this in this little section over here. And then when I get back out there, I'm not gonna talk down on these things, but I'm also not gonna talk about my love for it. Right. I'm gonna just engage with whatever everybody else is engaging with. And now that climate is shifting. You feel me?
Could I raise a question? May I raise a question?
For sure.
So I don't know about where you. I'm in Louisiana. Y'all say where y'all was from. I'm in Louisiana, by the way. So it's a very small sample size, right? But whenever you go in your local or whatever bookstore, how many people of color do you normally see when you walk in aisle for aisle any given day? I don't see many at all. The library, the bookstore. Whenever I do see another black dude in the bookstore, I like run to him like, man, what you reading? Like, I'm surprised. I'm like, damn, what you getting?
Safety in numbers.
It's like a slave. Like, damn, you free too? How you got free? So I'm not being derogatory or funny, but I'm just saying whenever I go to the bookstore, I'm a big bookhead. I never normally see other black people. Whenever I go to the library, I have multiple library cards, different locations. I never normally see other black people. So to answer the question, a Harry Potter level, a Lord of the Rings level.
I think it's possible
How?
because, like DL
We
said,
need the
we
white
reached
people.
that level with the Black Panther movie, so they're out there. We're out
But
there.
white
That is
people
such a-
can sing that though. White people.
Yes.
Yes. No, let's do it again. Whenever I go and see Django Unchained, or I go see Birth of a Nation, guess who in there more than us?
White
people.
Yeah.
When I saw the Butler, white people.
When I saw Hidden Figures, white people.
So I mean, to do it without them,
I'm sorry.
that's tough. That's tough.
It is.
I'm gonna get canceled.
Yeah.
I just refuse to believe that it can't happen. I
But
think
you know what,
we
Audra?
don't give ourselves enough power, enough credit for the
No.
type of power that we have. I mean,
I
look at
think-
how much we drive the economy. If we can drive the economy like that, I think we can take books to that level. But there's, like you said, it's how many of us read, and I still think there's more of us that read.
We're the number one consumer, but not on books.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Now, let me just add this. When you make the comparison of Black Panther, I'm gonna tell you, in my personal opinion, why that's not a good comparison. Black Panther was majority, probably 98% a black cast, right? I remember them two token white people. Shout out to them. But the reason why
Black white people on my show.
Oh, sorry, my bad. But the reason why Black Panther was so successful was because it pulled in the comic arena, Marvel.
Right.
That's why Black Panther was successful. It wasn't solely because it was a black superhero movie. It was because it was Marvel. It pulled in those 10 to 15 million people who just like Marvel movies. That is extremely important to consider when you're trying to make a comparison of a Black Panther to just a indie black author. Those are two different.
We've had other all black cast movies. They didn't do Black Panther numbers.
Okay, but here's the thing.
I don't think Red Tails did Black Panther numbers, did it?
Here's the thing, and then I'm gonna move on to the next
answer that question.
My wonderful husband is sitting off screen, and he's like my data person. Now, he just texted me and told me that black people, a conservative estimate, we contribute 1.5 to 1.8 trillion dollars to the economy.
Not in books.
Not in books, but if we have that kind of power, then I think if we had a concerted effort towards it, I think we could push books to that level.
I mean, if we had
the Harry Potter wand and we could just wave it all over the place, or had some fairy dust we could throw out there, yeah, it could work. I agree with you 100%. I was a writer for Rolling Out magazine for a year.
Okay, Enoch, what you got to say?
Oh no, Anissa, you can finish your point.
Oh, go ahead.
I understand that statistic, and I remember when I was let me go ahead and shout out Rolling Out. When I was a contributing writer for Rolling Out for a year, and I did a paper about that. And yes, we are the consumers of everything that is not by us. and not typically for us. So yes, we are consumers of our black dollar circulates in the black community.
For six
Black
minutes.
community.
6 minutes.
It's there you go.
I'm gonna
But
say 5. Yep.
Nope.
we go
6 minutes.
outside. So yes, our buying power is tremendous. The
Mhm.
problem is it's not being directed in the right places.
Mm,
No.
It's
mhm.
going to
Designer.
beauty supply store. It's going to everywhere that is not necessarily a black owned
I
Mhm.
mean, okay. Let's do it
business.
again.
Right,
I'm
but
sure
I
we
mean,
all
so
have
that
done.
just proves my point that if our monies were focused in other
Yes.
places, then absolutely, I think books
And guess
could.
what? If
What?
I had a Maserati,
Okay, Jonathan, what you're not gonna do is show me up on this show, sir. I will have Leon delete your
no,
video feed
not
from
Leon,
off the podcast.
not Leon, no. Let's be
Let's play
serious
the
for a
what
second
if
though.
game. What if? You know,
Like the sister said earlier though, unfortunately, like Jay-Z said, we love ignorant shit. You know what I'm saying? So
Not all
if
of us.
you are
Not all of us.
if you are vending your book at a vending experience and they're selling books and they're selling food and t-shirts
Right.
and hoodies and everything else, they walking clean past your book stand. I mean,
I've
I've
been there,
experienced it.
done that.
Maybe it's just me. I've experienced it a
I've
1,000
experienced
times.
it too.
Come on, Sean, come
I've
vend your
even
book at
experienced.
this festival. Why?
I did a book festival in Chicago a couple years ago, and this man actually wanted to negotiate the price of my book. My
Mm,
book was for a certain price that was hella cheap, considering they don't understand how much time and energy goes into writing a book. Right? That's not something you should take lightly. But he wanted to negotiate and barter for my book.
yeah.
So
That's a whole nother topic because when
I'm
when
sorry.
black
Yeah.
people we will go and drop $300-400 on a pair of sneakers,
Man, what you talking
on a
about?
purse, on clothes, whatever. But when it comes to
Don't
black
spend $15
businesses,
for
we
a
always
book.
want to negotiate and get the hookup and the discount. But that's a whole nother topic. So
So we're not doing Harry Potter.
So when we talk about the trillions of dollars that black people put into the economy, right?
mhm.
Is that strictly in the buyer seller market?
I don't know. I have to ask my husband that. Is that strictly in the buyer or seller market?
Let's get that data.
Buyer.
That's just purchasing power.
That's just purchasing power. And
And
how
that's
much
just
money?
black people, not other
Yeah,
people of color.
yeah. How much money are white people putting into the economy just
I
as
don't.
buyers?
Okay. Do you know how much white people are putting into the economy?
About to do some research.
Well, he said way more because there's more of them.
Oh, so the reason I asked that is we often talk about like this statistic comes up often, right? And we often talk about the statistic as a means to highlight how much impact we can have if we just get all on the same page, right? However, that it literally is impossible. It literally is impossible for all of us as an entire community to be
Yeah.
on the same page because we don't all have the same values,
Don't we
right?
always say we're not a monolith? We're not a
Yeah, we're not a
monolith.
monolith,
We're
right?
not a
And
monolith.
so,
Yeah.
like, we
Uh
don't
oh.
want to be a
Uh oh.
monolith when it comes to like figuring out our identities, but then we conveniently want to be a monolith when it comes to like our buying power, and it
We
just
want to
doesn't.
be collective, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
it just doesn't work that way. You feel me?
Yeah.
And at the same time, like I think sometimes where we get trapped up is that we're not focused on sustainability and we're focused on impact. But the way to have good impact is to first be sustainable, right? And so it's like when we talk about like, oh, if we'll ever be like as big as a Harry Potter, da 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 da, we not gonna have that same trajectory, right?
right.
Like
Okay.
J.K. Rowling could drop a Harry Potter and it could blow up because they have white privilege, right? But we don't have that. And so, what does it look like to strive for that? But first, strive for sustainability. Let me
Mm,
just
mhm.
be able to put out books that facilitate
Quality.
my livelihood. Then, what's the next level? Let me be able to put out books that both facilitate my livelihood and allow me to give resources to other people. Then what's the next level? And keep building that way. We don't have to like shoot to the top trajectory. And the more we try to like land on that, I feel like the more disservice we do to ourselves as a community.
Mm, I got
I
you.
like it. I like it.
Okay.
What
I like
do
it.
you think
That's
that's
the collection
just
plate
lack of
around.
You think that's like the lack of support that we have for each other?
I
So
think
I
so.
don't really buy into the like black people don't support each other thing because I see a lot of black people supporting black people.
But
I
we
think
don't support as much as we could.
Exactly.
I think that is valid. And I think part of it sometimes is that okay, there are a good amount of black people trying to run their own businesses
Oh, absolutely.
that have not done effective research, do not present well, and don't make a good case for representation of black owned business, right? And I think there are a good amount of black
Shots
people who
fired.
have interaction with these people, and then it shapes how they view and interact with other black
Absolutely.
businesses. And so sometimes I think we lean too hard on like, and I'm not saying you're doing this, I'm just talking about people in general. Sometimes I think we lean too hard on shaming black people for not supporting black businesses instead of talking to these black businesses about doing more quality shit.
Oh, I absolutely agree
Woo.
with you, and it goes with the books too. It goes with the
Yeah.
books
And
too
this is
because
why,
Man,
indie authors, and I'm,
yeah,
I
yeah.
love my indie authors, and I ride hard for my indie authors. But there are some people who send me books
It's
that
some
want to be on
shit.
the show, and I just slide it to
Yeah.
the
It's straight
side
up garbage.
because
Straight up
I'm
garbage.
trying to defeat the stigma that indie books are, are
Lower
shit,
quality, lower.
are
That's
Yeah,
low
right.
quality.
right, right.
And a
And
lot, and I understand that editors and things cost money, but some of these books I've read, like, did you even run a spell check?
right,
I'm
right.
with you on
So,
that, Audra.
And like
well, that's
you have to you have to have your shit together,
quality,
and
right.
if for no other reason than the fact that black people get judged harshly,
Harsh, yes.
more harshly than
Especially by
anybody
each other.
else.
that's
Especially by
Especially
each
by
other.
each other,
Especially
absolutely.
by each other.
a
And back
lot
to
of
the
a lot of uh, traditional published books have a lot of mistakes and stuff in them too.
They do,
yeah,
but
yeah, it happens.
it happens, but not
Oh,
as much as I've seen in some of the indie books that I've seen. And like I said, there's
right.
no shade. It's just that,
That's what it is.
editors are expensive. I understand that, but take the time to save your coins to get a good editor, and
That's the
not
most
not
important part.
your aunt BB
And
that no,
back to
we're not doing that.
back to the
Like
to the
a
title of this
real
show
editor.
about the self-publishing versus segregation. Like, just have a quality product.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just have a
And I
quality
mean,
book. No matter where it's at, it's a quality book, and it stands up against the other 1,000 books in this bookstore. That should be the goal. And if it's popping, then it's popping. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
and you
As
can
far
make
as
more
money.
mistakes when you have privilege. That is what privilege
Right.
is for. It's a cushion, right? And so it's like, and that goes back to like what I was saying earlier about the comparison thing. Like, we're not going to change the privilege dynamic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like
Absolutely.
for real, sometimes I think we want to change it in the this is a harsh way to word it, but I'm like speaking in draft. Sometimes I think we want to change it in the wrong direction, right? So it's like I want to be able to make as many mistakes as these white folk. Nah, actually, it should be more like these white folks should have less room to make mistakes like we do. You
Right.
feel me? Like and
Right.
like that whole
Absolutely.
dynamic. And so it sucks. It's unfortunate, and at the same time, those are the cards we are dealt, and the more quality we put out, the more it highlights the lack of quality in these other writers, right? Like, I'm a big manga fan, and when I tell you that these Japanese people are crafting amazing stories without a writer's room, writing the story, drawing it weekly basis, and is top tier compared to what I see in like Marvel and DC from comics, right? It's crazy. And I don't need to, they don't have the same privileges, right? Like, comics are obviously more accessible, but because this thing is so quality, it takes up so much more space in some
Mm-hmm.
people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And now, right, we're in a space where anime and manga are even more popular
Mhm.
than what it has been before. And I would dare say we're going to reach a point where anime and manga becomes more popular than comics, or comics start to adapt a more anime and manga style of storytelling, right? The reason Infinity War it was so great was because it focused heavily on Thanos. This humanizing of the villain is a very manga like storytelling tactic. You feel me? Japanese people have been doing that in manga for years. And now it got co-opted into this thing. And I don't say co-opted in a negative way, but it's just like people are like, yo, this is hits more. You feel me? And so the
Absolutely.
more we consistently focus on the quality things, the more we hold people to that quality standard without even having to talk against the lack of quality in another thing, it will fade to the back. It's just like natural
Absolutely.
selection.
All right. So let's move on to the next question. Black authors have been rejected by traditional publishers for their books being too black, not black enough, or
Not black enough.
not being relatable.
Relatable.
What is your response to that? And I'll start with Vasilona because you're kind of quiet over there, ma'am.
Yeah. Repeat it one more time. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. I said black authors have been rejected by traditional publishers for their books being too black, not black enough, or not relatable. How do you respond to that?
I think it goes back to what Anissa said. I hope I said your name right. Earlier, like they want us to have books about slavery, or if you've noticed that there's a genre of thriller. I think thriller and romance is like really big, but you don't see that a lot when you go in your local bookstore. It's all white. And then when you see the black author books, they're more of, like the I don't want to say house Negroes, but they do have that, like the Yellow Wife, and they're all based back in the 1800s and stuff like that, back in the slave times. So, and then the passing, like the black women passing for white, like I just see a lot of those. I don't see a lot of black authors doing thriller, which is the main thing that you see when you go in these local bookstores. So I feel like if you're not writing, like she said, the slave thing or trauma, then you're not going to get it.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to the point of what are you paying attention to? Because there are black thriller authors out there. I just had one on my podcast, Faye Snowden, who's going to be published on Tuesday. And she's written several thrillers. And Gracia Collins Rich wrote Handkerchief. So there are thriller authors out there. But again, it's what you're being what you're being you have to what you're being exposed to, and what you have to go look for it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in like the local bookstores, like
no, they're black indie authors. Black indie authors.
Okay, I'm talking about traditional.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. But then again, that goes to my point that you're not. You have to look beyond what traditional is offering you. But yes, traditional, it is a lot of that.
Okay.
Those types of stories. So, Anissa.
I think traditional publishing is all about making people feel good, white people feel good, since they tend to run this industry right now. And when it comes to whether the story is relatable, I think that probably has a lot of validity to it, because it goes back to making sure someone feels comfortable. White people like to let you into the room only when they're ready to let you in. And it has to be on their comfort level, on their terms. So if you have a book that they feel like they totally can't relate to, a hood dude selling drugs and trying to make money for his family, and you got somebody who's in some publisher that's in Midwest that just can't relate to that, and then that book is not going to make it on. That book is not going to go the traditional publishing route, because that's something that they can't relate to, and you can't sell a product regardless of what you're doing if you don't have some type of belief in it. So, but at the same time, I don't think that we should water down our stories. I don't think we should make them relatable to make somebody else feel good. That's why I went the route, and I have no regrets, even with my second and my third book, of self-publishing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
because I know the quality of the product that I'm putting out, and I'm not going to fit into this box to make you feel good, because that's just not who Anissa is at the core. And I know that wherever I'm going to go, I'm going to go based on being authentically who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I want to
don't
correct myself.
don't water it down.
Right, exactly. And I want to correct myself. Faye Snowden, who I had on my show that's publishing on Tuesday, she's actually traditionally published, and she's a thriller author. And then there is also, DL mentioned it, Dwayne Alexander, who wrote 40 Acres, I believe, which is a thriller, and Tiffany Jackson, she's also a
Yeah,
traditionally
Tiffany Jackson.
published thriller author. So those are some if you want to look them up, but
Yeah,
I just
some.
wanted to correct myself. Enoch, your response.
Um, I really agree with Anissa and trying to formulate it in my head. Being niche is much more lucrative than people think. Um, and having like that universal appeal is good. That's cool. And it also increases the chances of you getting lost in the sauce,
Mm-hmm.
because there it's a lesser chance that there's going to be something special about what you're making, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's universal. But when you're niche, and I'm using niche loosely, when you're niche, not only do you have an identity that sets you apart, which gravitates towards people, but because you're niche, and I'm just really big on sustainability, so that will come up like often while I'm talking, but you have a group of people, although it might be a small group, who you can consistently depend on to purchase your product, right? So I will always opt to have a guaranteed 1,000 people buy my shit than a potential 1 million. You feel me?
I'm
Because
with
I
you.
know I know what I can do with the guaranteed 1,000, and then they'll spread it to whoever they
And
want to
it
spread it to.
grows.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and then like them repeatedly doing this, if I'm managing my finances properly, I will be able to eventually branch it out to a larger audience without having to compromise who I am. The compromise is not a necessity. It's not a necessity for success. It's not a necessity for visibility. It's not a necessity for anything besides appeasing other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jonathan, your thoughts?
Yeah, whenever you mention the relatability point, I like what the sister said about a lot of these traditional publishing, the powers that be, they're not from our societies. They're not from our
Mm-hmm.
walks of life. So my first question in my mind was relatable to who?
Mm-hmm.
Relatable to whom? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you want me to write to where you get it, that's a whole different conversation. And you know, after the whole George Floyd thing, we see a lot of black, the big name authors. You're right. They are right. They're writing for white people. Whenever you first get the book and start reading, it's like, hold on, wait a minute. They're not talking to me. You explaining something to them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I see what this book is.
Mm-hmm.
And so unless you want to write like that, then so be it. But I'm not really with that.
I've always thought relatability was such garbage. I mean, if you can relate to some little boy running around being a wizard, or whatever, then you can relate. It's just that you don't want to relate because maybe it just makes you feel uncomfortable or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought that that was just such garbage anyway. I'm going to move on to the next question. As indie authors, do you think you are self publishing because you don't want to wait for a publisher to give your book the green light, or because you are, in fact, segregating yourself from an industry that does not value your voices?
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah. As indie authors, do you think that you're self publishing because you don't want to wait for a publisher to give your book the green light, or because you are segregating yourself from an industry that doesn't value your voices?
I would say for myself, I didn't want to wait. I wanted to be able to get with it. I'm a very aggressive person. I did shop myself in the beginning. And then when I saw where the conversation was consistently going, I said, you know what? I don't need that. I found the self-publishing route, and then I took all running with it. That was that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say
I'm,
the first one for me too. Oh,
no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I would say the first one for me too. I believe you said that we're doing it because. Can you repeat the first?
We don't want to wait
Yeah,
for traditional publishers to give us the green light.
right. Because I'm kind of new into this self-publishing thing, and I thought that I had to have someone else publish my book for me until I got onto and I honestly learned everything from getting on the Instagram and this book talk and bookstagram and all that, and realized no, you can publish your own book. So
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
where I am right now.
Okay. Enoch.
Yeah. As a poet, publishing as a poet, specifically a black poet who does not write in lofty language, is difficult, right? And with poetry specifically, a lot of these publishing houses that specialize in poetry books, they have like publishing contests or like these submission calls where you pay a submission fee anywhere from like 15 to 25, sometimes $50, right? You submit your manuscript, they sit with it for however long it takes them to sort through the hundreds, potentially thousands, depending on the publishing house, manuscripts that they receive. And then you wait months and months, possibly a year, to hear back and possibly get a no, right? And
Mhm.
so I just spent $25, sat on my manuscript for a year just for you to be like, nah, this isn't for us, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then, the poets run this gambit often where now I'm submitting to multiple
Mhm.
publishing houses, right? I'm putting my manuscript out, I'm ending up spending, it could be anywhere from $200 to $1,000, depending on how many people I'm sending out to. And I'm
Mhm.
gonna wait for all of them to get back just for a potential yes. And I wasn't with that shit, right? Like with Burned at the Roots, which was my last book, I had tried the traditional thing, right? I was like, yo, because I had self-published my first book, like literally just under my name, no publishing company or nothing. And I was like, yeah, I want to try this out, see, get some experience on that side of things. And it was just taking way too long. And I'm like, why do this when I could spend the same amount of money to get my business certified, right? Get an LLC, and buying ISBN numbers is fairly more affordable than I thought it would be when I first like dipped into the publishing space.
Mhm.
And then I was like, yo, I can put my own thing out, and that's fine because I tried to look up black publishers too, specifically in my area, and not many were coming up. Specific, especially many that I felt like would lend themselves to the type of writing that I did. And so yeah, it was all about me not wanting to wait for somebody else to open the door for me that I already knew I had the skill set to open myself.
Okay. Anissa.
Well, I tried the traditional route on my first book years ago, and it broke me seriously. I think by that 20th rejection letter, because each query you got a short amount of time to
Mhm.
impress someone you don't know, someone who
Mhm.
doesn't know you, someone who's not gonna read 3 chapters of your book. They're gonna read 5 lines of your letter, and you either sink it or you dunk it. Those are the only
Mhm.
two choices that you have.
Mhm.
And I got to the point where I was no longer going to subject myself to that self-deflating um stigmatism that I'm not good enough because
Mhm.
they didn't accept me.
Mhm.
So I went the route of self-publishing because by nature I'm an aggressive person anyway. If I want it, I get it. I'm a hunter, so I want to eat.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna go out here and kill that motherfucker. I ain't waiting on somebody to bring it to me. So that's my
So I get it.
mentality. And I think it serves all of us well to understand what it means to be hungry
Mhm. Mhm.
and not to wait on somebody to give us the crumbs. I
Right.
told y'all about them damn crumbs. I'm done with that.
Mhm.
So we
Right.
have to be willing to educate ourselves on the process of self-publishing, understand the ins and outs. But more importantly, I'm probably gonna get hate mail. but we also have to understand the craft of writing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Not
yes,
everybody,
yes,
not
yes.
everybody. If I have one more damn person come up to
Yes.
me and say, I want to write a book, I got a story to tell. First of all, is your story compelling enough? And do you know how to fucking write? Because
Yeah.
it's not something that you should take lightly.
No.
Anybody can put a stream of sentences together, and that shit might sound good to cousin Ray Ray and Auntie and them, but collectively, it's straight garbage. Okay, I got off
Right.
topic.
Right.
All
Audra,
right.
I'm sorry.
Jonathan, go ahead with your, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, I want to interject something real quick. The brother Enoch, when he was breaking down the self-publishing thing, it brought something back to the front of my mind. He was talking about trying to find black publishing companies to go to, right? And
Mm-hmm.
whenever I was self-publishing in the very beginning, I wanted to have all black everything on my book. The cover
Mm-hmm.
design person, like I said, the
Mhm.
editing, the
Mm-hmm.
formatting, all the
Yep.
parts of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the black press, maybe somebody here in the chat knows, where do you find people that have black press to print up our books?
If
Because
you
you can do the
I
whole
paid
got one
thing.
in
attention to
Atlanta.
my page this
You
week,
can do
I
you can do
gave
the
you a
whole
whole bunch of them.
yeah.
I got
Because
a printer in Atlanta that's black. Yeah, black
you can
owned.
do the whole process yourself. I find, but when it comes to that very last part, you end up having to go to them people to
No,
get your
I
stuff
got
Yeah,
you.
pressed
No,
out.
you
You
I
know
don't.
what I'm
got
saying?
you.
No,
I
you
got a
don't.
I got a
I was
There's
black
trying to
one
shop
here
printer.
in
around for a
Maryland, and I
minute.
gave you a
No,
whole
that's
bunch
good.
of black
That's
press
good.
that you can
Well,
go to get your
going
book printed.
forward, yeah, going
Yeah,
forward, we'll know that. But in the past, that
yeah.
was the one hang up that I couldn't get around. And talking to other authors too is like, how do we get around going to these people for this one thing?
Right.
You come
That
to
one thing.
Between the Reads podcast, and you
I
go
mean,
to my
we know
page.
that now. Yeah, yeah, that's,
She said, I'm gonna plug this shit one more
I'm
time for
plugging
you.
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
all
We talking about
when I
years.
did publishing our own, I printed 7 black publishers. And if you scroll way back to last year when I did Black Indie Author Week, I printed even more black publishers who actually have the capability to
To
print
press.
your
That's
book.
what we need.
That's what we
Press,
need. That's what we need.
press, black
Okay,
press.
so I'm about to start an argument. Do you think that black authors should have their own section in the traditional bookstores? Or should they be mixed in with whatever genre they write in?
I think it should be mixed.
I mean, back
Okay,
to what we
why,
said a
Barcelona?
little.
And then I'll get to
Go
you,
ahead.
Sean.
I don't know. I didn't like when I like the libraries had the little black section. Maybe they don't do that anymore, but back in the day they would have the little and it just be a little section.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I didn't like it. I think it should be with everything else.
Okay,
If
Jonathan.
it's fantasy, it's fantasy. Like I think it should be with everything else.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah, as we said a few times within this podcast, like you want quality work, period, in that particular genre. So I don't think it should be just sectioned off like this is black self help or black sci-fi. Like no,
Right.
this is great sci-fi in the sci-fi section with everything else. That's the way
Okay,
I see it.
Anissa.
For once, I'm not gonna be controversial. I agree. It should be mixed in. I think that we shouldn't be defined. Their books are not defined by the color of their skin.
Right.
So why should us? Why should we be defined first? First walk up is this is the black section, hence black author. So let me move on
Right.
over here to the better quality books, the white books.
Exactly what I
So
was about
no,
to say.
it should be all mixed in, based on the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, Enoch.
Yeah, I fully agree. I feel like once you put black in front of it, specifically with literature, actually, I would make this argument for movies too. People automatically think it's going to be traumatic, automatically. So it's like, why would I go to this section that doesn't talk about anything I'm interested in right now? You feel me? Like that's
Right.
how a lot of people view it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, it doesn't. Sometimes we are just out here. Me and my homie talk all the time about how like we hate the fact that if you have a movie with a predominantly black cast, it becomes a black movie. instead of
Mhm.
the movie.
Just a movie.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like,
absolutely.
bro, this
Right.
is a movie about students going to the mall. You feel me? But now it's like it's a black mall movie because
Because everybody's
it's
black.
black. And it's like, no, this is foolish. It still is the thing. And I think part of that hinders the sellability of books because if I am like not black, I may not think that story has anything for me.
It's
Yeah, I
not
like.
relatable, right? Back to
Yeah.
relatability, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I
Right.
guess the double-edged sword to this conversation is when I do go to Barnes and Nobles and Books a Million, and I do go to the African American section, I do feel crazy whenever that section over the years has been diminished. Have you realized that? How like most times at Barnes and Nobles or wherever, the black section is getting reduced to like only like two shelves. Because
Yep.
even the shelves in that genre, the last 3 or 4 rows is actually something else.
Right.
And I won't go into what that is because I'll get canceled. But
I don't.
they're
I don't
starting to
think
mix
they're
all this
doing
other
that.
kind of stuff in the section. To where it's like, wait a minute, out of these 5 shelves, only the first 2 shelves are actually African American. These last 3 shelves is something different.
You were gonna say something, Vasalona?
Yeah,
No, I'm gonna say that Barnes and Nobles, they did have like what you said, but they I don't think they have that anymore, not unless it's just in mine. But they've mixed the black books in with everything with everyone else. So when you go to fantasy, there's like there's a mermaid book with a black author, black mermaid, like
Skin of the
it's
Sea,
yeah,
mixed
maybe.
in
skin,
there with
skin of
all the
sea. Yeah.
other fantasy books in Barnes and Noble. So I don't think they're doing that anymore.
Yeah,
Some
we have
it
we have it
depends.
here.
It depends. Some
We have it here.
some some stores are still doing it. We have
Oh
some
wow.
interesting comments
Yeah, we have
here.
it.
Read Love Listen says, growing up, my local library and school library had it mixed up. The only time I saw it sectioned off was at Barnes and Noble. Books a Million and Borders, rest in peace, had them mixed up in her area. And DL White says, if they only got 20 black books in the place, how would you ever find them? If it's a healthy diversity, mix them in. I should be able to find what I'm looking for. And Antoine Floyd, you asked the question, where do I find the black owned printers? If you go to my Between the Reads podcast page, there are printers listed there from day, I forget what day it was, but they're listed there. And if you want to send me a DM, I can send you even more. And then Read Love Listen says, the only time I knew a book was black was if the author was unfamiliar, was if it said Kimani or Defina. Defina. Okay. All right. So,
Wow.
do you think that going the traditional route makes black stories less authentic?
I would personally say no. This is my experience and what I read. I don't think it's less authentic because it's the traditional route. In my opinion.
All right. Enoch, you look deep in
No,
thought
too.
there, brother.
Yeah, because I was having a conflict with myself. I'm tempted to agree with Sean that going the traditional route does not automatically make you less authentic. And then in my head, I was also thinking the only person who can make your story less authentic is you.
Is you. Thank you.
So
That's
it's like
exactly what I was thinking.
if I go the trade route, then I just need to maintain my authenticity. And if they don't want that, then
Keep
I
it
can
pushing.
I can make that decision to pivot and go some other route. But ultimately, like trade does not inherently mean inauthentic. It's me and whatever my values are that make a story inauthentic.
Right.
Okay. Vaseline?
I think
Oh,
we
go ahead.
have collectively as a people had this burden of feeling like we have to water down our shit to make it acceptable for other people to like, we keep talking about not allowing them to feel uncomfortable. And I guess that's probably where that question came from, right, Audra? Feeling like, if we want to go the traditional route and make millions of dollars and be on Good Morning America and be wherever we want to be, we have to make sure everybody's comfortable in the room and nobody's feeling indigestion and heartburn because we've told a story that they don't like or it makes them feel comfortable. But I agree. I don't think if you are true to your craft, and I'm sure there are some people who will say, it's about that money, it's about the bags. I get that too. Um, but if you are true to who you are and dead ass serious about what you do and more importantly, why you do it, then all the stuff that you want is going to come. And traditional, whether it be traditional or self-publishing, you who you are is for me, who I am. I don't compromise on that. I don't know if you guys have gotten that yet. I am uncompromising Anissa. You can either take it or leave it. If you don't, but I'm with it. I'm gonna be who I am because that's what's gonna sell me. I can't be somebody else to make Audra or Sean or Enoch feel better. That doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely.
And it's not sustainable, right, Enoch? It's not sustainable.
Barcelona.
No, I was just gonna say that's the joy of self-publishing is doing what you want and having your book how you want it, from cover to what you put in the pages on the pages. So
Absolutely. So Black bookstores, well, really all bookstores, but you would think that with Black bookstores it would be a little different. It's hard to find Black indie author books. So in what ways how would you address that issue, if you could, with Black bookstores about carrying more indie books, Black indie books?
I think sometimes you see the Black bookstores, it's like they're taking that Black section the boys know we talked about and putting it in their bookstore. So it's like, okay, we're a Black bookstore, but you're still only really carrying the traditional titles in the Black genre, right? So I don't know how much they're making a concerted effort to reach out and do the research that we talked about and finding those Black storytellers in these other genres to put into their story. I don't think they're really doing that on a mass level.
And D.L. White said that Black indies have to make their books available. Too many are lazy and only publish on Amazon. All right. Enoch?
I really felt what DL just said about the publishing on Amazon thing. Especially again, so many things just fall back down to like research, right? Because there are a lot of people who don't even understand that Amazon gives you an Amazon ISBN number, which is not the same as the ISBN number that gets you into the international database of books, right? And so therefore your book is only able to be on Amazon. You feel me?
Wait a minute. Say that again, because I'm on Amazon, but I own my own ISBN numbers. So
yeah, so when you
then
own your
you're
own
fine.
ISBN numbers,
But some people go through KDP, and KDP
I
gives you
ain't fucking with KDP.
Yeah,
I got
give
my own
you
stuff.
They got the whole KDP package.
Yeah.
The KDP.
supposed to get them, it's the best place to get them are from Bowker, right?
Yeah. And so and then it's
Few
like
out there.
you pigeonhole yourself and you essentially trap yourself in the same way you could be trapped with a publishing contract, right? And so I know this is not necessarily answering the question that you asked, but
I think it does start there.
It's a great resource, and there are also tons of other resources. So make sure you just have an ISBN number. Own your own ISBN.
Own your own ISBN number.
Yeah,
They're not expensive, man, at all. Not expensive.
They not.
I mean,
You
they're
can get
not
10
cheap
for like 300.
I was about to say
They're
they're
not cheap. It's not like $5 or $10 or $50.
No,
You got to
$10
spend a
What
couple
I'm saying is,
stacks
you
on
can
it,
go and
but,
get you can go and get packs of you can get 5 and 10 at a time.
Yeah, and
So
it's
you
not
can get
cheap.
bundles.
It's not. I mean, it's not. You're gonna spend
not
a few
free.
$100.
Yeah.
So
I mean, back to what we spend money on. I mean,
I
some
know,
folks
but I'm
spend
just saying for the
150 on
authors
some
that are out
Jordans.
there, don't think you're gonna go and get an ISBN for $30 because it's not
Well,
gonna happen.
that's fair because cheap is relative, right? It was
It's relative, right? I mean,
it was cheap to me because I expected it to be higher.
so
You
did I.
ballin' like
So
that.
did I.
You
So
balling
did I.
like that, Enoch.
Yeah,
I expect the more. I expect the more too.
But think of it from perspective. If you're spending $300, but you're getting 10 ISBN numbers, then you're spending $30 per ISBN. So
Right.
Yeah, you
But
bought
when you
10
buy
books.
it individually,
and
they
they
don't
don't
sell it that
expire.
cheap.
See, I don't buy them individually. You buy them in
I've
bulk.
just bought one
Yeah.
because I was on a budget, so I bought the one,
But look, but
and it was
listen,
not
and then
$30.
you gotta
But back
buy one for every version. So if you want to
Yes.
Yes.
you gotta buy
Yes.
one too.
Yes.
Back to the
Yes.
marketing side of self-publishing. If you do a good pre-order situation, it's all paying for itself.
Right.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
able to do that. Fortunately, I was blessed to have a good pre-order thing to where everything I had to pay for, I didn't pay for it out of my pocket. Like it was
Right.
all from the pre-sale bag. Like, all right, the cover cost this, that cost this. Like
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not
So,
Also,
paying it is.
a good pre-order resource. And I know some people have their things about this. I've had my things about it, but I'm utilizing it right now for my manga, because I am writing a manga. Is Kickstarter. If you already have your book done, right, and you know it's a story that people would be invested in,
mhm,
go ahead and set up that Kickstarter. You get all those pre-orders, pay for the ISBN, get it, print it. Just make sure you do all your math on the front end so that you don't put yourself into debt. And boom, there you go. You're good.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. And y'all in the comments know the cost is not insurmountable, but when you were on a budget like Sister was, it was like, okay, that's part of my budget. I have to put that in. So it's not insurmountable. It's not.
Right.
Um, you can get 10 ISBNs for $2.95. That's not bad at all. No, it's not. It's not. But
No.
if you are
If you
thinking,
ain't got it though, you ain't got it.
Once again, I said pre-sale, pre-sale, pre-sale. I'm always preaching that, man. Pre-sale. I
Yeah,
tell all my clients that. Get that pre-sale popping, man.
right,
pre-sale was helpful.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm gonna have this last question, and then Leon, if you would please, after I do the exit, if you would take us out with the intro video because people missed that. I would love to. I want everybody to see that. So, last question in 1 minute. Tell Black readers why they should read indie books. Enoch, you start.
Oh Lord.
Why not?
You should read indie books because they are the most unconstrained readings you will have as someone who is absorbing Black stories. That doesn't mean they all gonna be quality, right? But if you want to be a part of the movement that is putting these stories closer to the forefront, you have to consume the stories. And the only way to do that is to purchase them, is to support the authors, is to read them. And you don't have to do a whole bunch, right? Just find the people that you like, and you can just rock out with those 4 or 5 authors. You feel me? And then they'll do the rest of the work in terms of like opening doors. But yeah, it is impactful to the entire value system of creativity in the Black community. So yeah.
Okay, Barcelona.
Well, I was gonna say because you're supporting someone's dream that hasn't, gotten to the traditional publishing yet, and
Mhm.
helping them get on and get published. I mean, not published, but popularity. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Getting seen, recognized, that type of thing. I
Mhm.
think that's what is important.
Okay, Jonathan.
Yes, ma'am. I love analogies and parallels, as you can tell. So, just like in sports, just like in movies, some of the best players in the world, for some reason, don't make it to the league. Some of the best entertainers don't make it to your TV screen or to the radio. You will find some incredible jewels and gems if you do the research and some of the digging and find some of these independent writers and amazing storytellers. Put it like
Okay,
that.
Anissa.
The main reason to buy Black indie books is that we're telling your stories. We're telling the stories that are relatable, that are real, and have an importance in our community and our society.
Mhm.
So just like you can go to the movies and watch Marvel and get what you need to get out of that, give indie an opportunity so you can read these books and you can be like, oh man, that seems real. That's somebody that I know, because that's where you're gonna get that sense of community, is when you find things that you feel like you can be connected to. And give Black indie books a chance. I promise you, there may be a weeding out process to get to what fits for you, but
Mhm.
I promise you there's something out there for everybody.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, we have come to the end of Black Indie Author Week and to the end of um, this panel discussion. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here with me today. I
Yes,
appreciate
thank
all
you.
of your
You too.
insights. You
Thank you.
are just, you blew me away. This was by far just the most wonderful event for me of the week. I've been looking forward to this. Thank you, Enoch. Thank you, Anissa. Thank you, Vasalona. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate you all. Don't forget that there's still a few hours left to enter the Black Indie Book Box giveaway. So go to betweenthereads.com, scroll to the bottom, go to second annual Black Indie Author Week, go to the bottom page, click the link, enter. And I hope that you found authors to put on your TBR list. I hope that you found Black businesses that you could support as authors, as readers, as entrepreneurs. And thank you to all of my panelists, and thank you to everyone out there watching, all 13 of you that are there. I thank you so much for being there and for commenting and interacting with me, with my guests. I appreciate it so much. And until next time, you know what to do. Grab a book and read, and don't go anywhere until you see this outro, because I want y'all to see this video.
That was nice.
So, y'all, since